Good morning. Welcome to the this 24th of April Audit Committee meeting of Angus Health and Social Care, IJB. Start off with apologies. We've not had any apologies.
No apologies.
Thank you. Okay, I would like to welcome a couple of new members today. We've got Nicky Worrell. Thank you very much for stepping in to one of our vacant spots. So you're very welcome, and your volunteering has been very much appreciated. Thank you. We had another one, but I don't see Kirsty on the list. So. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I don't know you, Kirsty. Sorry. And welcome to Kirsty. Sorry, that's the first time we've met. Who is replacing Catherine? Again, thank you very much. So hopefully it's not too onerous, an additional duty, but very useful one. So you're both very welcome. Thank you. Right, where are we now? Okay, item number 2 is declaration of interests and statements of transparency. So in accordance with the Code of Conduct for members of devolved public bodies, is there anybody here wishes to declare any conflicts of interest, or anybody online? No, thank you. So if we can record no interests declared. Right, we'll move on to the item agenda proper. So item number 3, 3A was the minutes of the previous meeting on page 4. Have we all had a chance to read through it? And has anybody got anything they want, or anything they want to add as alternative, or add as any other business that isn't included in the agenda? So if you could indicate so. No. So are we content to approve those meetings as an accurate reflection of the last meeting we had in the 30th of December? Thank you. So the recommendations are... No, there's no recommendation, we just accept them. We'll move on to 3B now, which is the action points, page 8 onwards. And if I could pass over to Sandy Berry to talk us through those bit by bit. Thank you. Sandy, can you?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Helpfully, this is a relatively short list of carry forward action points, and I'm just going to comment on one or two of them. We have got a series of more current action points from our December meeting. They are, you can see a couple of them have gone green already, and the other ones will hopefully be progressed in a reasonable timescale. Picking up some of the ones from towards the bottom of the first page, there's an item about audited annual accounts, item 10, audited annual accounts, and we note an issue about discussions we need to have with Angus Council. Just to note that because of the timing of some of our meetings, that issue, we'll have to just work out how we manage that. But the timings of our year-end process at the end of this year may be slightly different to previous years. And that reflects one of the papers we have later on regarding our audit plan and the timing associated with that. So we haven't initiated those discussions yet, but we'll do that in a manner that's consistent with how things are panning out when we get to July, August and September. The item below that, which is at the bottom of the first page of actions, is about the risk management report, and we're just noting there that the future versions of this report will try and include more emphasis on clarifying the assurance position. So we hope to embed that in the report that comes to the June meeting, and as we do that in our June meeting, we'll hopefully be able to ratify that point. And then the final comment I'll make is on the second page of actions. It's the one that's marked up as red. This has been a long-standing action in terms of concluding it anyway. It's about sharing information regarding lead partner services, and we are in a much more advanced position than where we were certainly when this action point originated, and we've gradually been putting the building blocks for that resolution in place. And my anticipation is that by the time we get to the June committee, that will be documented as being complete. Many of the building blocks are already in place and are already functioning, but we'll have documented it as being complete by the time we get to the next meeting. So, Chair, that's the main summary points I just want to share with the board, but happy to take any questions.
Right. Has anybody got any issues, questions? You're quite content about the extra meeting, possibly in October, not scheduled yet. Okay then, thank you very much everybody, and thank you Sandy. We'll take those as accepted on the action items. Right, moving on to item 4, which is a protocol procedural issue, appointment of the Vice Chair of the IJB Audit Committee following the resignation of Catherine Lindsay from the IJB, and it's a bit unfair to make Kirsty the Vice President on her first, Vice Chair on her first day. Vice President would be better actually. So I'd like to pass over to Sandy to navigate us through the protocol choreography of whatever it is.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Chair. Yes, so this committee, as all of you will know, is made up of members of the IJB, and we have a chair through Andrew. Catherine had previously volunteered and was acting as was our vice chair until the point she's resigned from the IJB and therefore stepped down from the audit committee. So we have put an email out and a request out to members of this committee to volunteer to step forward to be the vice chair. So the first thing what we'll do is we'll ask for a volunteer to come forward, and then hopefully ask for a proposal and seconder of that volunteer. And we are anticipating a volunteer will come forward. So we'll put that out there to the room, please. Okay.
Thank you, Sandy. I'm Chris Boyle, Staff Representative for Angus Council. I'm happy to put myself forward as Vice Chair of the Audit Committee. Could just add just a couple of caveats. For instance, as a trade union rep, there'll always be a caveat, but there is a caveat that wouldn't be any expectation at this point in time, given my own workloads and responsibilities through my role as Unison Branch Secretary, that there would be any kind of expectation at this point in time of any natural succession should at a point in the future step down from his role of Chair of the Audit Committee. So with that sole caveat in mind, I would happily volunteer to take on the role of Vice Chair of this committee. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chris. And I think we will. It's important to note that caveat they put on there, and it would be helpful if we can minute that in the formal notes, just so that everybody has that as a record. So I am grateful for you volunteering for that. So if we can have a proposer, George is happy to propose. Chris, can we have a seconder? Yeah, thanks, Kirsty. So with that, I think, unless somebody slightly randomly puts their hand up and wants to compete for this role, Chris, thank you very, very much for stepping forward to do that, and completely acknowledge the kind of caveat that you're putting around that. But it is important, in case Andrew can't fulfil the duties on any particular day, that we do have a vice chair. So that's great. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you, Sandy, and thank you, Chris. Very much appreciated. Thank you. And we note your caveats. Okay, then, moving on to item 5, which is the internal audit report, follow-up actions and governance action plan. It's you find that on page 10, and again, if it's pass it over to Sandy to highlight or talk to the report and highlight any special points he wants to bring out. Sandy?
Okay, thank you, Chair, again. So in a second, obviously, I'm more than happy to take comments, because we have still got an extensive list of outstanding actions, but just some introductory comments. For the first time, we have merged together the internal audit follow-up actions and other governance actions that we are still following up. We've done that partly because the presentation is similar, but also because the governance actions plans, which were things that originated off, in most cases, a number of years ago, have gradually whittled themselves down. We are down to 3, so it didn't really feel that we needed to retain a separate report for that. So this is the first time we've brought them together. For us as authors of this report, that felt okay, and either today or certainly another time in the future, if people felt it was better to separate those two issues out again, please do let us know and we can reflect on that. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to comment on 2 or 3 of these actions, but absolutely happy to take questions on any of them. The ones I'm going to just flag up are a couple of the longer standing actions, and they're the very first 2 actions in the tables. The first one, which is on page 13 of the overall pack of papers, from Audit Report AN 0520 about risk management. This was very much about issues to do with risk management, but also to do with lead partner services, or as we would have known them previously, hosted services. It's also a point that appears on the second appendix, and it appears in the action points. It's a common theme there. But as I mentioned a few minutes ago, for some of these issues, we are very much getting the building blocks in place, and I am hopeful for this issue, by the time we get to our next IJB meeting or IJB Audit Committee meeting, we'll have been able to document that everything is in place. As I say, the building blocks are gradually falling into place regarding this action point to issues. And the second one I want to flag up is, again, another kind of long outstanding one. It's the second point on, again, page 13 from Report AN 0620. It was about data quality. I'm partly flagging these up because they are older ones, and just to give you some kind of reassurance that we are still working on the older issues. This was an issue where we were looking at home care monitoring and invoicing and procedures and practices associated with that. The issue originated obviously quite a long time ago, 2020, as you can see. I think the early phase of our response to that was obviously, I suppose, to some extent compromised by the work we were all doing on COVID, which does feel quite a long time ago now. We have continued to look at how we develop a solution for this. And during this year, we have been revisiting this issue with a group of people that we get together regularly, called our third-party provider meeting, where we discuss our interactions with the independent sector and the voluntary sector. And we're looking at issues associated with electronic invoicing and other solutions about that. And some of this is a systems issue, an IT issue, and trying to make things work practically for us, but also work practically for the providers that we are working with to ensure that any solution did have a viable interface between ourselves and providers' IT systems. It's something that's very much evolved around us. As I say, it was difficult at the start to get any traction regarding it, but we are very much, as you can see from some of the comments in the comments column, we are very much looking at that. That's the 2 main items I want to comment on. Generally, there, as you will see if you go through the comment section, there are a number of things that are moving forward towards completion. There's issues associated with things like civil contingencies, the information governance strategy, and on page 17 towards the middle of the pack of actions, there's an item regarding risk appetite and risk management, and I know that board members have gradually been receiving invites to sessions over the coming weeks and months. So again, that one is moving towards conclusion and should be completed by the time we get to June. So that's just a quick update on a few of them, but I haven't gone through them obviously in detail, but more than happy to take any questions or comments on any of the action points or the general paper.
Sorry, Sandy, it's just I missed a bit there. Something about 4 members receiving invites. What was that? Can you go over that again?
Well, I think, unless I've misread that, I think board members have been invited to a series of drop-in sessions regarding our individual risks. Is that?
Yeah, there's a whole series.
Yeah, there is a series of kind of lunch drop-in sessions for Audit Committee and IJB members to contribute to the risks and the risk appetite. But I'm looking at everybody's blank faces. So I'll pick that up, Sandy, with Abby. Abby's coming this afternoon, but we'll double check and make sure that everybody does have the invites, because I think they start next week, right, or the following week, so they're due to start soon.
Are you happy with that response?
Yeah, that's fine, yeah. I just didn't pick up what Sandy was saying, that was the thing.
Right, thanks, Sandy, and thanks, George. And before I move on to opening the thing to further questions, just for the benefit of Kirsty and Nikki, some of these items may appear very, very old, and they are very, very old because they've been brought up in audit report, internal audit reviews of way back when. They're not showstoppers, clearly, because we would have been flagging them up a lot sooner. But they do contribute to weakened governance, and it is important that we get these finally resolved. But just in case you think that, why have they been years and years? Because I had the same question when I joined, but just for clarification. And the other thing is that, yes, it's important that, Jill, that we sort out this, or make everybody understand the purpose of these numerous invitations we've been getting. I think it'd be one a month. I thought they were all for development sessions. I wasn't clear about what they all were. So maybe you can either speak to it now or just come back to us later, please. Thanks.
Happy to speak to it. Now it is on the agenda for IJB. That's our work plan and development session plan. So on the months that we don't have a formal IJB, we are going to have an IJB development session on certain topics that are included in the IJB papers.
Thank you for that. Does anybody, George, have you got another question on the?
Yeah, just for Sandy, is it worth saying anything, Sandy, on the last two, the red ones? Is it worth saying anything on them? Just because they're red.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so these are both on the governance action section of them. So one of them is, and just as an aside, these are issues, because they've been particularly long-standing and difficult, these are two issues that we continue to flag in our IJB papers themselves. There's a small extract of governance issues that we put into the IJB reports. These two are definitely there. So one of them is regarding our issues associated with mental health services. And we try to continue to give updates to the IJB meeting about where we are, things like financial accountability issues, as well as resolving any residual operational accountability issues regarding mental health services. So we're putting updates regularly in the IJB reports. It does feel, and Joe might want to comment on this in a second, it does feel that there has been kind of renewed impetus to resolve those issues. Some of them will be easier to maybe make some progress with. Some will continue to have an underlying difficulty. But we have been working closely with NHS side over the last few months, and we are trying to put regular reports in the main IJB report, the main IJB finance report regarding that. The second one is regarding large hospital set-aside activity, and that is the activity that the Angus population have in terms of using 9 wells for us in particular, and developing accountabilities and reporting for that. So we have been putting more information into the IJB reports for that, and there's been, for the last probably 2 or 3, maybe 3 or 4 IJB reports, finance reports again, George, there's been a paragraph and a section about large hospital set-aside activity. We haven't quite got the accountabilities for that perfectly resolved, and we are still trying to just get that. That, I think, is the building block that we need to resolve the accountability side of it, because we are now seeing the information flow through more regularly. It's worth noting, and I might say this afternoon, that the activity levels within 9 wells for the Angus population have absolutely increased compared with previous years, or I should say recent years. So we have seen an increase in activity levels and occupancy levels in 9 wells compared with 22-23 and 21-22 as we came out of COVID. But yeah, we're trying to put updates regarding these points in the main IJB finance reports. Okay.
Thank you, George, for that question. Thank you, Sandy, for the clarification. Just for the benefit, again, for new Sandy, could you very quickly, very quickly, talk about what large hospital set aside means and all the difficulties in estimating how to quantify this, because it's a judgmental thing. It seems like it's been on the agenda forevermore. Now, this is a national issue. It's not just confined to Angus. All IJBs have this problem. It's a seems to be about interpreting bed hours or something like that. So could you give us a quick run through?
Yep, Chair, I can quickly do that. And as a reminder for some, and just as an introductory set of comments, but I'm always happy to take questions afterwards for new members of the IJB on this subject. So when many IJBs were set up, they were managing a series of devolved services or delegated services that generally did not include acute care. And the acute care in most parts of Scotland, in most health board areas and IJB areas, was concentrated in the bigger hospitals, in regions, and in Tayside that was Stracathro, Nine Wells and Perth Royal Infirmary. So the services that are running those, whether they're planned care or unplanned care, surgical or medical care, would generally continue to be managed by the health board or for us through the acute sector in NHS Tayside, unlike, for example, medicine for the elderly or psychiatric services, which were devolved and managed within health and social care partnerships and IJBs. So this mechanism, looking at large hospital activity, called large hospital set aside, was about the accountabilities for the quantity of care that was being run through from local populations into the acute hospitals. And for a number of specialties, there was an element of accountability built in for health and social care partnerships. So the challenge has been the nuances in that, developing the nuances in that accountability. When you're not operationally managing a service, you are still effectively trying to manage the strategic responsibility in terms of the quantity of care that was being required for your population in, for example, Nine Wells Hospital. So it has been difficult to develop that. It's not a natural thing for a system to be dealing with. You're having the operational, the strategic accountabilities in different places, and this was trying to bridge that. So we are now improving the activity information we see, and that will help us gradually work towards improved accountabilities.
Thank you. Any other questions on item number 5? No, thank you. So, note that there isn't. Let's go back to the recommendation very quickly. Right, it's recommended that the committee notes the report and the progress made to date in terms of delivering the planned responses. Are we content with that recommendation? Thank you very much. Right, we'll move on to item number 6, which is the 2023-24 internal audit plan. The progress report on that, and that report is submitted by the Chief Internal Auditor, who is that Jocelyn going to be speaking to this?
Yes,
Can I pass it over to you, Jocelyn, to talk us through the lines of the report and then field any questions if they come? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this is the most up-to-date position and progress with the 23-24 internal audit plan for the IJB, and also any relevant audits from the partner organisations. So the progress is set out in detail at Appendix 1. And since the December meeting, we have finalised the report AN 624, Charging for Services follow-up, and that's going to be presented at the next agenda item. So what that means is that the 23-24 plan is complete with the exception of one audit. The internal control evaluation audit is ongoing. Our fieldwork is just about finished, and we do expect a draft report this week. So just as a bit of a sort of a taster of how that's going to look, this is the audit that covers all areas of governance. The initial feedback is that we're seeing what we would expect in terms of development of strategy and planning for the delivery plan, and moving towards financial sustainability. We're seeing good linkages already to performance management, and we're seeing progress with establishing links to risk management. Just looking back to the report that Sandy just presented, we are seeing good progress against previous actions. I think the message is that they're perhaps not quite over the line yet, but we are seeing things moving in the right direction. We're seeing a lot of momentum And I think one of the key messages is just really to keep going with that, and keep doing what you're doing. So overall in 23-24, and based on the work that's been completed to date, I'm able to provide assurance that work is progressing as planned, and that will enable me to provide an opinion at year end. And once that ICE report has been issued, we will move on and we'll be focusing on our year end assurances. So that would really complete the 23-24 plan. In terms of the partner organisation reports, for NHS Tayside, we've summarised our internal control evaluation report, which provided reasonable assurance. The areas that have been highlighted within that summary are really things that you would expect to see. The financial challenges is always going to be there, but we've really focused on that theme of the need for the collaborative governance, everybody working together, and making sure that the partners are delivering on the integration agenda. We've talked a lot about trust, about spirit of integration, and really just making sure everything's been done in line with the integration schemes. Excuse me. We've also noted the implications of the delayed implementation of the National Care Service as a consideration. And on the ICE, the NHS Tayside management team have agreed 7 actions to address our recommendations. Moving on to T25-23 whistleblowing, we were able to provide reasonable assurance in that report, and it was generally very positive. Again, we're highlighting that sort of theme about maintaining momentum and making sure that whistleblowing arrangements are actually embedded within the culture of the organisation. So in terms of Angus Council reports, there were 2 relevant reports that were completed as part of the continuous audit programme. The first one was the payroll review, and that provided comprehensive assurance with no errors found in the test period. And the second one was the creditors' duplicate payment review, which provided substantial assurance with action in progress to recover identified duplicate payments. So that's all I wanted to say on the progress report. I apologise for my croaky voice. I've got a bit of a cold, but I'm happy to take any questions on the progress report.
Okay, thank you, Jocelyn, and thanks for the comprehensive review of that plan. And it's encouraging to see that you have recognised the positive moves that we're making as an organisation. So that's reassuring. And I suppose as regards the plan, with that small, tiny exception, everything seems to be progressing along well on the internal audit front. So thank you for that, and I'd like to open it up for questions. Has anybody got any questions on the internal audit report plan for the following year? I don't see any hands up. Okay. Let me just move on to the recommendations. Sorry, I'm a bit slower today because I forgot to bring a mouse with me. The unfamiliar on laptop controls at the moment, so bear with me. I'll try and get better at it as we go on through the meeting. Anyway, moving on to the recommendations. There's only one again. We just asked to note the work undertaken relating to this year's internal audit plan. So, as there were no questions, everybody's nodding. Thank you, that's noted. Yeah, just final word from Sandy.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So I'm happy that we've closed that point out. Just to flag up there, and building on one or two of the comments, we will move on in the next few weeks and maybe a month or two to work with Jocelyn and our colleagues to develop the 24-25 plan. And I hope, well, I'm sure we've got a timeline in our work plan at the end, but we'll do some of the things that we've done in the past, look at the risks that the IJB is managing. We obviously have the internal control evaluation built into that, so we'll be in contact with Jocelyn and our team about developing that plan for the year to come, and that'll come back to the IJB and the Audit Committee in due course.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Sandy. Yeah, it's a strange phenomenon with auditing. You're always kind of in the past year looking forward to the present year. So there's a lot of work to be done on the auditing of the past year, and you're moving into the next financial year. So yeah, these dates can sometimes be a bit confusing, certainly to the chair. Okay, but thanks for clarifying that, Sandy. So I'll move on to item 7, which was alluded to by Jocelyn in her report. So this is a kind of a deep dive audit report on charging for services and the follow-up on action AN 06/24. I don't know who's speaking to this one. Is it you, Sandy? Yeah. Right, thank you. I'll pass over to Sandy to go through that.
Yeah, right. Thanks, Chair. I'll just quickly introduce this, but obviously we'll give Jocelyn a chance to speak about the report in a bit more detail if she needs to or wants to. The background is we had an audit report that was was undertaken in 2021 regarding charging for services. That reflects some of the concerns that we had in our overall organisational structures at the time. As many of you will know, 2021 we were still dealing with the kind of COVID situation and managing that. And then probably for a good part of 22-23 we were still dealing with the final parts of the recovery from COVID. And we noted in the background section that we probably didn't make as much progress as theoretically we could have in that early phase once the original report had been issued in 2021. So that meant we've had a really extended period of trying to build and bring together our responses to this audit. And it felt, given that this was a key risk for the partnership, and also it was a complicated one at the interface between the partnership and Angus Council, that it would be useful to give the Audit Committee and the IJB, but the Audit Committee primarily, a reassurance that the work was progressing on this in terms of responding to that. So that's what we agreed, that our internal audit team would come in after Christmas of this year, start this year, to review where we are. Under the current session, we've summarised where they feel we are, and I think you can tell from the report that they are relatively reassured. I'm now speaking on behalf of Jocelyn, who can do that probably better herself. Anyway, they do come across as being relatively reassured about where we are, which is certainly, as a recipient of this report, was helpful. So that was just a couple of introductory comments, and I'll pass over to Jocelyn regarding the overall report.
Thank you, Sandy. I think saying we're relatively reassured is perhaps a bit of an understatement, but we have provided substantial assurance that the recommendations from the original audit have been progressed, and we don't do that particularly often. So it is a very positive report. The charging process is a really complex one. So this audit dates back to June 2021, but we had anticipated from the beginning that it would take some time to complete actions, and that there would be some required refinement of the original actions. So we were really pleased to see the improvement plan in place to cover off all those original points, and the fact that additional actions have been added to it since the audit. We were also very content with the adequacy and effectiveness of the arrangements to monitor and report on that improvement plan. And I think we assessed progress in February, March. So we had 11 of the original 16 fully complete, 5 in progress, and of the additional 8 actions, 4 were complete and 4 were in progress. So yeah, overall, I think really good leadership on this area, and very pleased to see these actions coming through. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jocelyn. It's especially in my experience, it's unusual to see this uncharacteristic sort of, dare I say, exuberant tone from an audit report. They tend to be more muted than that. So I think that really is reflective of the amount of effort and leadership that has gone into solving this problem. So whoever was involved in that, I think, should be personally thanked by the appropriate management people. But thanks very much, and it's good to see that particular item well and truly nailed. So I'm going to throw it open to questions, and George, you have a question.
Mine's a comment, Chair, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
it's actually, I mean, I've spoke to Sandy about this. It's actually related to the scope of it. While I welcome the report, I mean, and the outcome of it, and it started a long time ago, but I think we've maybe missed an opportunity in that it didn't actually cover anything on one part of the charging policy, which is where we can actually reduce or waive a charge for those who actually find themselves in financial difficulty. I did check with Sandy, and the last time I asked, which might have been a year ago, when I asked how many people's charge had been waived or reduced, there were none. So, I mean, something it clearly wasn't working there, and this time round, one person has. I am advised though that there is a review going on, which hopefully will look at that, but it surprises me that one, it wasn't in there, but the scope is the scope, obviously. But I think it's maybe a missed opportunity there. And two, it's good to see that a review is ongoing. Thank you.
Thanks for that, George. It sounds like that these are quite operational issues that you're talking about, whereas maybe the governance looks at the structures and not so much policies, but the kind of assurances in place. So I don't know who wants to pick up that particular item about the waiving of charges. I don't know whose remit that would be under. Okay, I'll pass it over to Sandy.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Meakin. Yes, so we have shared a couple of emails. I think we've maybe got more sitting in my inbox right now, which I haven't got to yet. We'll obviously keep an eye on this from an operational perspective. And the other thing is we are looking at one or two of the policies that sit, the detailed policies that sit around the overall charging and contributions policy. And as we do that, which is part of, I think, the review you were mentioning, we'll continue to perhaps share the outcome of that with the various committees that we need to. A lot of the charging policies themselves do need to get signed off by Angus Council, but we have agreed that as we develop any policies going forward, we will share them with IJB members, not for approval, and also the timing isn't ideal in terms of getting IJB approval, but not for approval anyway. And a lot of the time when we are looking for changes in our issues associated with charging, where we would get that approval from Angus Council, that would be in the period from about November to January. And the timing is not ideal in terms of putting things into an IJB meeting, but we have made a change that we'll try and share changes around that area with IJB members for information. Okay.
Okay, you happy with that explanation? Thank you, George. Any other comments, Jill?
Thank you, Chair. I think just to pick up on your own comment and that one by Jocelyn as well, in terms of the level of assurance provided. Hopefully it'll be the first of many that come through with substantial assurance, and I think just to give assurance that we are looking at the learning from this. So in terms of what have we done different to ensure that we can provide internal audit with the right information to be able for them to give the level of reasonable assurance. And just to pick up on your comment around recognising the staff involved, and that's something that we'll pick up internally.
Thanks for the comment, Jill. Yes, we should always learn and move forward and learn from lessons. That's great to hear that. And yeah, thank you for passing on the congratulations in advance. Any other comments on the particular, Sandy?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I should have said this when I was just providing my introductory comments. Again, thank you. We'll deal with take that positive feedback back to the team as well. Absolutely. One of the things that we are, is a slightly evolving situation for us, is we are looking at the IT systems that support the charging processes, and that's something that has been a feature throughout this audit, right back from 2021. So that's, and it's also something that's kind of has been evolving this year as we've been looking at things. Just in case anything ever does crop up as an issue regarding that, it is something that we're aware of. And it's something that we're already working on. It's not an immediate thing. It's been an ongoing issue because we've been transitioning from one system to another. And and it's something that we're absolutely keeping an eye on. So just put that thought in people's minds, and you'll make sure that if there's ever an issue that needs to come back to a committee, it would come back.
Thank you for that added clarification and explanation, Sandy. Okay, are there any final comments or observations? I don't see anything, so I'll move on to the recommendations on page 25, and it's one recommendation. It's recommended that the IJB Audit Committee notes this report, acknowledges the progress being made, and thereafter continues to monitor the actions that resulted from the original report. So are we happy with that? Yes, nods all round. Thank you. So we'll move on. From there on item number 8 on the agenda, which just let me find it. Okay, that is the joint report, review of the role of the Chief Finance Officer for 2023-2024. Report by Sandy, Chief Finance Officer. So I guess it's all about you. So can I pass it over to Sandy?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It is all about the role, I think, rather than me. So, this is a report. Those of you that have been here for a wee while will know that we try and do this report. Well, we do this report every year, and it's to give this committee the reassurance that they need that this role of the Chief Finance Officer not just has been done properly, but also has the tools to do that job properly, and whether that's the staff to do it properly or the IT systems to do the job properly. And it's to give that kind of reassurance that the job can be done properly. The assessment is built around CIPFA, the Chartered Institute of Public Financial Accountants guidance from 2016, still the current guidance. It's an extensive checklist of actions that they look us to review, and some of the detail regarding that is set out in section 2.1 of the report. What we have agreed previously, given it's such an extensive checklist of items, is we will not go through that in detail every year, particularly as it's a slow-moving issue, and that every other year we'll do a detailed assessment, but in the years in between we'll do a high-level assessment, and that's what we've done this year. And what we've really done is gone back and look at things that were worth noting by exception, and we have done that. And again, it's a relatively slow-moving issue. We've put the Appendix 1, where we've got the only issues that we felt needed to be flagged up in there, and we put some bullet points in, say, for example, section 2.4, where we're noting the fact that we are reliant on various things coming from our partner bodies. So I feel, given that every other year, and last year we undertook this assessment, last year we undertook the assessment with our internal auditors, and that every other year we will include an element of independent involvement in any assessment, that should give this committee the assurance that it needs that this role, I say, has the tools, has the resources, skills and capability to do the job that you need it to do. So hopefully that gives you a wee bit of background, and the committee will be content with the recommendations, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Sandy. So just for clarification again, is this the full audit or is it an interim audit?
Chair, this is the interim year. So we did a full in-depth assessment last year with our internal auditors taking part in that. So it had an element of independent objectivity, if you like, or independent involvement, and we will do that next year. Yeah. But this is the year in between, so it's a higher level review.
Sorry, did everybody hear that? I forgot to switch off the. It's more for the people online. Yeah, I don't hear any. Okay, do we need Jocelyn to comment on this particular one? I'll give Jocelyn the opportunity to comment if you feel if you want. I think you're on mute.
Sorry, apologies, Chair. Yeah, I think just to reiterate what Sandy has said, having our involvement every second year is absolutely appropriate. And we have obviously had a look at the outcomes of this, and we don't have any issue with it. Whilst we haven't validated the outcomes, it has been a reasonably collaborative process. So in my opinion, the committee can take really quite robust assurance from what's been done.
Jocelyn, thanks for that added comment. I'll throw it open to Jill has a question.
Probably a question and a comment rolled into one, and just hearing what Jocelyn was saying around the committee taking a level of assurance, and I'm just wondering if there should be a modification to the second recommendation. Notes that the IJB is generally compliant with the principles, or maybe even one, I'm not sure, but just to put something in there around a level of assurance for the audit committee around the role of the chief officer rather than chief finance officer, rather than just noting the content of the report, if the report is indeed providing a level of assurance.
Yeah, is it the kind of the words that are used, or should there be something extra in the note or recommendation 2?
I'm just wondering if we should say the audit committee receives a level of reasonable assurance around the compliance of the chief finance officer role. I'm just asking the question. I don't know, Jocelyn or Sandy, I don't know if it's ever been done before, but if the purpose is to provide a level of assurance to the audit committee, then we probably need to be explicit around that in the report and the recommendations.
Okay, I'm a bit. I'll throw over to Sandy and Jocelyn, but I always thought that kind of audit comments tend to be very muted normally. Generally, compliant is really happy. I'll pass over to Jocelyn to make to address your particular question about the recommendations, and should we reword them or should we boost them up a bit? Jocelyn, can you please comment on that?
I think that this discussion is really helpful in terms of having members discuss the level of assurance you feel you can take from this report, which is the really important bit. What we do with some clients in terms of assurance reports is we have, substantial assurance, reasonable assurance, limited assurance, and no assurance, and ask you to make a decision on that. So, I mean, it's really, I think this is for the committee to decide what level of assurance you can take from this report. And if you wish to record that, I think that would be really helpful, and I would support that. But I wouldn't want to comment on that level of assurance because I think that's the role of the committee, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thanks. Yeah, it's clear in my mind. Okay, we're generally compliant, but how does the meeting feel about the performance, the governance of the financial function within the IJB? Has anybody got any strong comments on it? I'll pass over to Chris first.
Not necessarily strong, Andrew. I was just kind of wondering, I mean, one of the principles there was Principle 2. It talks about the core responsibilities, and that it was a partly compliant response. And it said due to capacity and systems issues, finance reports not directly linked to performance information. Is that going to be an ongoing issue, or is that going to be fixable at a point in the future to bring the role of the chief finance officer, as far as I can see, compliant in the topics that have been mentioned in the paper today?
Okay, that's on page 41, and specifically.
Apologies, that's right, Andrew.
No, that's okay. That's specifically to do with capacity issues. Sandy, would you like to comment on that?
Yep, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chris. Yes, this, I suppose, it's worth commenting that we're looking at one bullet point here. I can't actually remember, Jocelyn might recall, but I feel there's probably about 40 bullet points on the assessment, of which 2 or 3 were not really applicable. and they're the ones that are listed in the report where we're reliant on systems from other people and things like that. So this is, I suppose, there's an issue probably here about system capability to match financial information with performance information. And it's not a simple thing to do. And you'd have to have a pretty sophisticated system to allow you to do that. So, well, why we've said due to capacity and systems issues, I haven't said how much capacity and what type of systems issue we're talking about there. With an infinite level of capacity or more people in the team, yes, you could do that as a manual kind of intervention. But our systems generally at the moment that we are working with don't allow us to easily map the financial issues to performance. They would allow us to do that at a summarised level, but it would be a general position. It's a really quite a difficult thing to do. We are actually we have a paper this afternoon where we talk about performance indicators in terms of the IJB. But one of the things that we're looking at in that paper, I think there's a line that says we're continuing to develop those indicators. But one of the things that we're trying to do, not in detail, but trying to do as a general theme is look at our resource profile, look at the activity that falls out of that, and then look at how that translates to performance. So trying to think, what do we spend our money on? Where are our people deployed? Where are our hours delivered? What quantity of hours do we have? But what does that translate into performance? So it's something that we are trying to just think through again. But they're not simple things that simple tweaks in systems or simple adjustments to capacity would solve. So that particular indicator is going to be for some time, I suspect, partly. Maybe moving in terms of how partly, but not completely. Yeah.
Are you happy with that clarification?
Yeah, absolutely, Chair.
Right, going back to the original comment. Oh, sorry, are there any more comments on the suitability or otherwise of our financial system governance? I see nothing. So going back to Jill's comment, we're looking at possibly rewording to, have you got a further clarification on that one? Or further comment on that, Jill? I'll pass over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I guess on reading the report, I would be suggesting a level of reasonable assurance taken from the report. Sorry. No, that's okay. No, I'm just saying, as a member, I would be proposing a level of reasonable assurance around the report and the role of the Chief Finance Officer.
Right, sorry, microphone. There's a proposal from Gillian Galloway that we reword the recommendations, specifically number 2, and it's a proposal that these words should be notes that the IJB is generally compliant with the principles set out in the review, and IJB Audit Committee is satisfied, reassured. What's the right wordage?
Takes reasonable assurance.
That the IJB Audit Committee takes reasonable assurance that.
Regarding the role of the Chief Finance.
Regarding, right. Okay. So, one more time. Notes that the IJB is generally compliant with the principles set out in the review, and the Audit Committee is reasonably assured as to the role of the Chief Finance Officer. Okay, have you got a note of that? I need a seconder for that. So that's George Meehan, seconder. Okay, so is everybody happy that we adopt that?
Question online, Chair.
Oh yeah, sorry, there's a question online from, who was it?
Jocelyn.
Jocelyn, can you, all right.
Yeah, Thank you, Chair. It wasn't really a question, it was just more of a comment to add to the discussion. When we look back to the definitions that we use, which are SIPFA definitions, reasonable assurance means that there's a generally sound system of governance, risk management and control in place. Some issues, non-compliance or scope for improvement were identified, which may put at risk achievement of objectives in the area. So hopefully that's helpful in kind of forming that discussion.
Thanks, Jocelyn. That's fine. So, yeah, everybody's happy with that. Okay, so we'll move to the recommendations. Item 1 is to note the high-level self-assessment of the role of the Chief Finance Officer. Notes that the IJB is generally compliant with the principles set out in the review and takes reasonable assurance that the function... yeah, I get mixed up. Whatever I said before. Yeah. Right. Whatever was being proposed and accepted and seconded. And thirdly, it notes that every 2 years a more in-depth assessment will be undertaken, as we normally do anyway. This should be considered as part of the planning for 24-25 internal audit plan that we will talk about later on. Okay, that's a bit of a struggle for us.
Can I just narrate back number 2 just to make sure?
Right, could you read out that again? Thanks.
So for recommendation 2, we have notes that the IJB is generally compliant with the principles set out in the review, and IJB Audit takes reasonable assurance regarding the role of the Chief Finance Officer.
Happy with that, everybody? Yes, thank you. Phew. Yeah, that was a good one. Let's move on to item 9, which is the external audit report for, it's on page 43. Let me just get there. And, okay. Report by Chief Finance Officer on the 222, see what I mean about going back in time, 2022-23 external annual audit report, external. So this is closing it out. So I'll pass over to Sandy for some comments before I throw it open for questions. Sandy.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So this is one of a couple of reports that you obviously interact with our external auditors, Pauline and Mark, on the call. I'll take this report first. As you said, Chair, a follow-up on last year's outstanding action points from the auditor's report that we received in August. There was one key action, and it is a difficult one to kind of completely close out. It was about demonstrating that we have a financially sustainable health and social care partnership, but we're not unique in having difficulties regarding financial sustainability. But we are keeping our IJB aware of where we are. We provided a report to the IJB in February regarding our plan for 24-25 to 26-27. And there's a further report going to the IJB today, which actually includes a recommendation about coming back in August. So we are keeping the IJB pretty sighted on where we are. And as the comments say, although we can't demonstrate, we are closing out a 3-year plan. We do have a plan to cover the first financial year. So on that basis, because we are continuing to bring this back to the IJB and there continue to be actions over the coming year to bring this back to the IJB, we're hoping we can deem this one to be complete. And I suppose at that point, it's maybe just helpful to just ensure that Mark and or Pauline are comfortable with that assessment.
Okay, so who of our colleagues from Audit Scotland is going to talk to this one if they have a comment? Pauline, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we note the progress that has been made so far, and the next paper on the agenda is our annual audit plan for 23-24, and you'll note that in the wider scope and best value section of the report, we specifically talk about financial sustainability as an area that we will typically cover for all audits every year. So as part of that work, we'll consider the progress that's been made so far on the prior year's recommendation, and we will report our findings in terms of how satisfied we are with the progress that's been made in our 23-24 annual audit report at the end of the audit process.
Thank you, Pauline. Okay, well, have you got any further comments before I pass it on for questions? I'll throw it open to the floor. Has anybody got any comments or questions on this report? It's pretty well complete now, I think. We're all aware of the financial situation. Doesn't do any harm keeping talking about it, but as long as we're monitoring it and doing something about it. So, okay, happy with that, given Pauline's comments that we're moving into the next year's planning anyway. Right, so the recommendation is that we consider and note the attached external audit report action plan, and that the IJB's response within the action plan are deemed to be complete. So can we draw a line under that particular audit report? Yes, everybody's agreeing. Thank you very much. This is going really well, isn't it? Right, famous last words. Going on to item number 10, which is, Pauline alluded to that, which is the next external audit plan for 23-24. Do you want any preparatory comments, Sandy, before you pass it over?
Chair, I'll just introduce this because we put the covering report on it, then I'll pass over to Pauline to comment on the report in a bit more detail. Yeah, so we put background comments in here. You'll be familiar with the audit cycle that we're just about to get engaged with, and this is the plan from the external auditor's perspective. From our perspective, from my team's perspective, we're obviously working with Pauline and Mark and their team for the second year. I think it went reasonably well last year. We probably commented on that last August, September when we were closing things out. But we will continue to keep in contact with Pauline and Mark's teams, be that via Teams or in person, and we'll do all we can to ensure that the auditing process, which really kicks off after we submitted our accounts in June, goes as smoothly as possible. I know that Pauline and Mark will comment on the timing issues. We'll come back to that as we kind of close this out, because we'll just need to make some comments about our future meeting organisations. But at that point, I'll pass over to Pauline or Mark. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pauline, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just take you through the paper that we're bringing to you this afternoon, which is our annual audit plan for 23-24. I'll take the paper as read, so won't go through it in too much detail, but just a couple of things I'd like to bring to the committee's attention. So the first of those is at Exhibit 1 of the report. So that's page 51 in the pack, page 5 of the plan itself. This exhibit outlines the materiality levels that the team will be working with in terms of carrying out the financial statements audit. You'll see there we have a planning materiality level of £4.2 million. So that's set at 2% of gross expenditure. That figure is based on last year's financial statements. When we get this year's unaudited financial statements, we'll revise that figure, but it will remain at 2% of gross expenditure. We also, as part of our planning, identify what we refer to as performance materiality, and that's been set at 75% of the planning materiality, or £3 million. Essentially, that is what we consider to be a trigger point. So when we're carrying out our audit work, if we highlight any misstatements or errors, once they exceed or approach that £3 million mark, we would then take a step back and consider whether the team need to carry out further audit testing just to ensure that there aren't any material misstatements in the accounts. And then finally, £200,000 below is the reporting threshold. So that's the level at which we would report any errors or misstatements to this committee as part of our annual audit report, this committee being those charged with governance. Exhibit 2 of the plan. This outlines the significant risks of material misstatement to the financial statements that the team have highlighted as part of our annual planning and risk assessment work. You'll see there that we only have one risk of material misstatement, and that's the one that's due to fraud caused by management override of controls. This is a standard fraud risk that we are required under the auditing standards to include in all annual audit plans. It simply recognises the unique position that management are in to override internal financial controls. And you'll see there in the final column, we have a number of planned audit responses. So this is the work that the team will carry out throughout the financial statements audit. And in our annual audit report, we will report on the findings from that work. So just underneath that exhibit 2 at paragraphs 19 to 22, the auditing standards also require us to consider the risk of material misstatement with regards to income and expenditure due to fraud. And you'll see there at paragraphs 19 and 20, for the reasons outlined there, the reasons why we have rebutted that. We don't consider there to be a significant risk of material misstatement. We will carry out our standard audit testing as we do every year, but we're not required to do any additional testing in relation to that. We also, at paragraph 24, we have highlighted another area of audit focus. This goes back to a previous paper on the agenda, and it's around the large hospital set-aside and mental health services estimates. This simply recognises that the calculation of both of those figures requires a level of management estimation and judgment. So we just consider the methodology and the robustness of the data used in those calculations. And members will recall that was in last year's annual audit plan, and we had no issues with regard to that. Next section of the report, just going back to the comments I made earlier, the Code of Audit Practice for Public Sector Audit requires us to consider more than just an audit of the financial statements. We're also required to consider those 4 bulleted wider scope areas as part of all of the audit work that we carry out. Members will have seen those 4 areas in previous plans and annual audit reports. And as mentioned earlier, there's a specific one that we do for all bodies on financial sustainability. And finally, the last section of the report is the reporting arrangements and the timetable for this year's audit. As was mentioned earlier, we are Audit Scotland are working towards trying to get as many of our audits back to a pre-COVID timetable as far as we can to be in line with statutory requirements. As a result of that, we have been directed by the Auditor General and the Accounts Commission to prioritise certain audits, and local authorities are one of the groups of audits that we have been asked to consider prioritising. So in terms of my audits, Angus Council is one of the priority audits. So for this year, the team are focusing on signing off at Angus Council by the end of September. The audit team that we use for the council and for the IJB are the same members of staff, so we have to use those resources in a way that prioritises the council while also doing the IJB. The result of that is that the IJB will not be signed off in line with the timetable last year. I think we signed off by the end of August last year. That would not be possible this year because the team have to prioritise the council. But just to give members some reassurance, the team work on both of those audits concurrently. So we don't wait until the council's finished before we start the IJB. So as soon as we get the unaudited accounts for the IJB, we would commence the audit. It's simply that at the end of the audit process, there's quite a bit of work that has to be done in terms of clearing reports, and also the lead-in time for papers, submission of papers for committees means that it would be too tight a timescale for us to prioritise both of the bodies. However, we will work with management between now and the end of the audit process to ensure it's as efficient as we possibly can. And we certainly hope that in line with previous years, there aren't any significant issues. I think as was last year's audit was very smooth. So I anticipate that the vast majority of the work will have been completed in a timely fashion. It's just at those final stages of preparing papers for committee, we might not be able to do it by the end of September. So I think there's already been some proposed dates that have been submitted perhaps at the start of October. So that's why we've got some to be decided dates in there. So that was all I wanted to say in terms of this year's plan, but I'm happy to take any comments or questions on it, and I'm joined by the Senior Manager for the Audit, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pauline, for that comprehensive review of the plan, and thanks for clarifying some of the technical terms like the thresholds for action on materiality, which is useful education for me. Noted, yes, that there will be, because of your prioritisation of local authorities, we may be pushed into a possible additional meeting, but that should be fairly straightforward without tempting fate. Judging by past history, should be okay. And this is a meeting that could be done online, so we don't need to convene in person. Is that correct? So it could be quite a quick formality, hopefully. So it's not adding pressure onto the audit committee's tight schedules as it is. So thanks for that. Thanks for it. Mark, do you have any comments you wish to add to what Pauline has said, or are you happy for me just to throw it open to the floor?
No, happy for you just to throw it open, Chair. Pauline's given a fairly comprehensive outline of our plans for the year. And hopefully everybody's just had the chance to read the paper prior. So no, nothing to add, Chair. Happy to answer any questions though. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. And it's just reading over this report is very encouraging, because it's a comprehensive protection for everybody that nothing wriggles through the system, and it's very much appreciated that you go so diligently through the audit. It helps everybody, us as well. So has anybody got any comments on the plan for next year? George Meehan, Councillor Meehan.
It's a question, possibly Sandy. It's for my own head. Firstly, I'd like to welcome the audit plan, which is very comprehensive. I did actually read it all. But my question is on the recommendations. Recommendation 2 approves the proposed audit fee of an amount and devolve authority for approval of any reasonable supplementary fees. Can you give an example, Sandy, of what they might be?
Yes, I'll try and give you an example. We may have actually had supplementary fees so far in the last pre-existence of the partnership. Okay, I'll do all that again. It won't be as effective the second time. Right, sorry. I'm sure Pauline and Mark will be able to chip in if I don't give a good example. But we haven't had instances of this during the existence of the IJB. But it is a possibility. And an example may be where the information that we have provided to our auditors at the first time of asking was not sufficient to allow them to reach the kind of conclusions that they would need. And, for example, they needed more information from us, but more particularly that they needed to spend more time at their end analysing that information and doing further reviews and whatever. So it's probably more to protect our audit team in terms of the quantity of work that they have to put in terms of responding to what we give them. So if our information is not good enough, not simple enough, not to understand, comprehensible, of the right quality, it will require them to spend more time on this audit than they otherwise would have. And that is something that I would expect them to come back to us and say, look, that has consumed more of their resource, and that would potentially generate a supplementary fee. So I think that, Pauline's nodding her head, so I think that's a reasonable example. If there's other types of examples, obviously feel free to chip in, but it's that kind of thing, I feel. Okay, thanks.
Thanks for the question, and thanks for the explanation. And without tempting fate again, given the assurances we have on the financial governance that we mentioned previously, I think the risk of additional payments are very low. But there's never, we're never 100% certain, but I think the risk is pretty low. And I take it that the audit fee is increased. Sorry, it's probably explained the thing, but it's increased in level with current levels of inflation, etc., the usual sort of thing. So it's a reasonable uplift. There's nothing strange there. So has anybody else got a question other than George? Right, well, thank you very much. Okay, I'll move on to the recommendations. Number one, it's on page 45 for everybody. It's number one, considers and notes the attached external audit plan, approves the proposed audit fee of £33,360 and devolve authority for approval of any reasonable supplementary fees to the Chief Finance Officer. And lastly, notes the potential uncertainty of the timing of the report arrangements and the need for a possible additional rearranged audit committee meeting to deal with the reviewing of the final accounts and the external audit outputs, and notes potential holding dates. They've already been advised, so hopefully everybody's kind of penciled that into their calendar. So, are we happy to accept those three recommendations as stated? Thank you very much. Okay, move on to the last item prior to the date of the next meeting, so that will be on page item number 11 on page 63, which is the annual work plan of this committee for the coming year. Again, Sandy, would you like to make a few comments on it?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So, we try and produce a work plan for committee at this time every year. So, just to get, so basically the agendas are plotted out and everybody knows what to expect. This work plan reflects, as we say in the paper, the terms of reference, basically the remit of the committee as it currently stands. We've got one or two comments there. We will expect, well, I've written down here April, but in June we will receive the 2023-24 internal control evaluation, which will all be part of the governance and annual accounts process that we then see unfold from now through June into July or September or October. So that will all be part of that work. We've got risk management audit updates coming through. We continue to receive our directions reports. And I think it's important to remember that we have this issue about dates in the the August to October period. And we do have a development session still scheduled in. Development session is scheduled for the 24th of, scheduled for October, which will have been planned to be the same day as the IJB meeting. So we'll just have to see how dates pan out as we get to October in terms of the item we just mentioned. But hopefully that annual development session will still be able to go ahead, and we'll create and liaise with people near the time about what is suitable to go on the agenda for that development session. But hopefully this makes sense for everybody and people feel comfortable about approving this, reflecting our current remit.
Okay, thanks for that extra clarification. Yeah, I wouldn't like to particularly have to shift the development session. So we'll keep a close eye on how the audit reports is panning out. Given that it's only a one-item agenda that can be done online, I'm hoping that we can, if needed, have that extra meeting without impacting the development session. I think the development session is very important that we do have them for the audit committee and its members. So, given that, let's move on to the recommend. Oh, and has anybody got any? Sorry. Jill's got.
Just in relation to the work plan in the development session, in the paper this afternoon for the IJB, there is I acknowledge it's not noted as a joint session, but it was proposed that October was a joint development session on blueprint and good governance for October, and that would be a joint audit committee and IJB development session for the 25th of October. So that was the proposed topic for that development session.
Thank you. I don't know when the plan was drawn up, or is it, have we taken that into consideration?
No, I know when I mean, these things are all happening, and I haven't joined two dots.
Right, now.
More than sorry again, everybody. Yes, so I haven't joined those two dots up perfectly, but the item that Jill has just spoken about, in terms of the an item of interest to the whole IJB membership, will be of particular interest to Audit Committee membership, and will construct the IJB Audit Committee's development work around that and around that content as well. So we'll still make sure we have space for the Audit Committee to have the development session, but that issue that Jill has mentioned will be of particular interest to Audit Committee members.
Thank you. That tends to normally coincide with the private meeting as well, with the auditors. Is that in there?
The private meeting with the auditors has tended to happen before the meeting where we subsequently review the annual accounts. So it happens the day that we sign off the annual accounts would be the day you would have the private meeting with the auditors, not on the day of the development session.
Thank you for that. Yeah, we normally have we'll pick this up as you go along. Right, so given all that discussion we've had, and we'll make sure that everybody's needs are catered for and that we don't lose out on any specific audit development time as well. Moving on to the recommendation, it's basically we're asking the Audit Committee to approve the annual work plan for next year. So everybody happy with that workload? Thank you. So that's been accepted. So, and finally, the date of the next meeting, item 12. It's a hybrid meeting, and it will be on the 26th of June from at 11:30 at the Town and County Hall, Forfar. Nobody got any comments on that? Fine, accepted. Right, thank you very much for everybody's contribution, and we've finished at a reasonable time, hopefully. So thank you. So we can start there.
John, you can stop the live stream now. Thank you.